Testing. JB here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. April 2nd, 2024. Just going to talk a little bit about the markets, talk about some of the positions I put on today, talk about some of the positions from yesterday. Ooh, the S&P just spiked a little bit. And yeah, go from there. But first, easy to talk about the markets. Take a look at yesterday. The S&P was down about 0.2%. The Nasdaq was actually in the green, and the Dow was down about 0.6%. And you would think we just had the biggest market crash in some time, right? Because people tend to come out when markets are selling off, saying, "I told you, be cautious." I mean, anybody who trades, you should always be cautious, right? That's almost like a given. But it's kind of comical. People saying, "Oh, I saw the charts. Yes, that told me we were going to sell off 0.2% on the S&P." Well, needless to say, there was follow through today. Markets were actually, the futures were kind of hanging in there overnight, mixed between green and red, and then all of a sudden we just started to fall, and then just a big melt, and led by small caps. Small caps are still down over 2%. They hit the lows here at 130, broke under that 205 handle I was talking about on the watch list this morning. The SPY broke under that 518. I think it was 24 area, 518.40 from last week, I believe it was. But it looks like we're bouncing above that, so that's a good sign. And you know, it's probably easy to say we've come so far so fast that you would think it's going to be easy for a big substantial pullback. But I mentioned it. I think that chop last week bodes well for. I'm not saying more highs this week, but maybe we hold our ground here, chop, and then we can look at that the following week. But not going to rule out downside either. You have kind of a triple event here. So you have the rising rates, the stronger U.S. dollar, and then oil, which is all three of those hit highs back in the early fall, well, September, at the end of September, and that marked the move on the SPY from 450 down to 406. Are we gonna have deja vu all over again? I don't know, but you take a look at the oil. Let's see, it just hit October highs or September highs. Let's see here, $80, and yeah, in October it was 93, $94. And I guess right in the middle of October is when we hit the end of October, we hit those lows. Take a look at the U.S. dollar. Again, the U.S. dollar was at the U.S. dollar index was at 107 in October. We're at 105 right now, and ramping up from 102. And then I use TLT just as a gauge for the, and I have the dollar sign there for yields. So we hit the lows. TLT was down under 82 back right at the bottom of the market pullback in the fall. So, it's easy to do overlays, do comparisons to setups. Is it different this time? I mean, back then it was Fed Chair Powell kind of spooked folks saying higher for longer. I don't think the market was expecting that. I think it was March was when everybody started anticipating that we're going to get some rate cuts. So then that got pushed back, and also the market just rallied. And now we're in that same kind of environment where we've had some hotter than expected inflation data outside of the PCE last Friday. And now you have folks saying, hey, is it going to be higher? Are we going to start scaling back rate cuts to 2 instead of 3? Is it going to be in the fall now instead of July? So Powell speaks tomorrow at Stanford. I think it's Stanford Business School. I think it's at 12:10, something like that. I'm not sure if he's going to say anything market moving. You also had more Fed speakers today. I forget, someone was just talking not to rule out a possible July rate cut. So it's choppy. Well, as long if yields continue to head higher, it's going to be very hard for the market to hold its gains. So hopefully TLT, the 10-year can tick back a little bit, and markets can find some support, and we can head higher from there. Or at least into the earnings season. And then Q1 earnings season is going to be pretty big deal, especially from where we've come. All right, so that's that on the markets. Couple names I've added. So you know me, I've been talking about the cannabis space for last couple of weeks, especially as I got the Canopy, CGC calls. I think this is a trend that's not just a flash in the pan kind of situation. I think it's longer term. This morning, Florida Supreme Court announced that they're going to allow a cannabis legalization vote on the ballots in November. Just another notch in the belt of cannabis, and I think Florida is the number 3, the third populous state in the United States. That's a huge market. So I think that's some of the reason why ACB is running more than CGC. And not only is it a catch-up play. So if you take a look what's happened with CGC, it's went from $2 or even maybe it was a little lower than that, all the way all the way up to 10 last week, and hopefully it gets back over that this week. Whereas ACB Aurora started kind of similar, a little higher, and it's only up at five. I wouldn't say only, but only because it's rallying nearly $1 today, but it's at $5. So I think it's catching up. And so I was looking possibly to add some more CGC calls, but I already have those. So I think ACB offers another opportunity. I think it's going to play catch up. I was looking at $6 strikes, but I'm like, if I don't think it's just going to go to $6. If it continues to rally, it's going to go $8, possibly $10. So you take a look at the ACB chart. It was back in the it's late September. It was up near $11. Not saying it's going there, but that's similar. That's pretty much why I added those strikes. So that's CGC, that's ACB, and then unfortunately, you would think IIPR would rally in sympathy with some of these names, but it seems to be falling based on what's going on with the overall market, what's going on with REITs. SRS, which I talked about yesterday, is in the green again today. So I think that's just more of a function of people who have REITs as part of their investment strategy or portfolio rebalancing. So unfortunately, IIPR just becomes one of those names that is probably just succumbing a little bit to more selling pressure on that side. So I'll continue to hold IIPR, and I'll look for other opportunities to play that one for upside. I mean, I think it was nine sessions in a row to the upside. It's from the middle of March, IIPR, and then this is only 3 down days in a row. Unfortunately, those 3 down days have wiped out 7 sessions of gains, but still like it for upside. So that's IIPR, CGC, ACB. So some positions I added today. Oh, you know what? I don't like GRWG. It's just a little, I hate to use the word shady. There's just, and I think it was, of course, I'm going to forget the person's name. He's my favorite short guy. He just did EQIX, which I didn't really agree with because, I mean, I don't think it's a, let's see here. It's funny, he does this short piece on EQIX, and now all of a sudden the FTC and SEC are looking at who is, anyway. So there was a nice short piece on that, and I read it, and it was like actually very eye-opening. So, similar to why I don't trade Tilray that much anymore, or why I look at ACB and CGC instead of Tilray, because it's a lot easier to get convicted in a name when it seems like it's a clean play. There's no issues, financial issues, filing issues, possibility of shady characters involved. So I kind of stay away from those. But hopefully, if you're in GRWG, it continues to head higher. So those are pot names. So I added Spotify calls. I talked about it, was it last week or the week before? I think it was Bank of America put it on their focus list. The stock gapped up like 5%, and then it gave all those gains back. I think it went all the way up to 280, and then I think it closed like in the 260s. And then it's been churning around here, and similar to what DELL has as on a setup, tight Bollinger Bands. It's been trading around this 275 to 260, 275 range since the start of March. At some point, it's going to break out. I love the Spotify story. They raised prices in France from a tax issue. The Joe Rogan's the leading listened podcast by 3 times. I think he has 15 million listens, comparable to 4 million in person who gets the second most amount of listens on podcast. I just think it heads higher. So I was looking at some calls, and typically when I'm looking on calls on Spotify, they look expensive. I'm looking at the 280s. I'm like, oh, maybe I'll get to 280s. Then I looked at 285s. I'm like, oh, those look inexpensive on a risk-reward basis with 3 days and 45 minutes left in a week. It's not going to take much for it to go. And, again, the chart's set up nice. It's a great story. At some point, it's going to break up to 290. I've been waiting for that break. Hopefully, it's this week. So that's why I went and got those calls. And then on the flip side, I got the MDB puts. So, I put that on the watch list. I've been trying to do Avago, LRCX, or some of these chip AI names that I think at some point I'm going to sell off 7% or so just because the market's selling off or people are taking profits as a greed reset. But now I'm looking, I said, well, you take a look what happened with Snow last week. You had the CEO doing the insider buy. I've been looking to get the calls, and it just keeps selling off. To me, it means folks are kind of getting a little bit out of that cloud space. So MDB is a big player in it. The great results, great growth story, but it seems, they had a lousy quarter last quarter. Was it last quarter? Maybe it was the quarter before. It was last quarter. And it hasn't found a bounce yet. And it's pretty much right at the 340 handle. It hasn't hit the 340 since November. If it breaks that, I think 320 comes, and I think it comes quick. And I and I hate to say think again, but I think if you look, I think you could do it even if the market bounces tomorrow and the next day. So that's why I went and got those as a hedge, because I think it's going to go down whether the market goes down as well or goes up, or even if it just stays flat. So not going to add any more puts there yet on MDB. I was looking at the 330s; they're expensive at the open. Thankfully, I didn't grab those. But that's kind of the thought process behind adding those MDB puts, because especially when you're in call positions, it takes the emotion out of holding some calls when you know even if the market slides, you can offset some of the losses and reinvest that into some calls on bounces or things like that. So that's the thought process there. So and then I'll talk about the GLP ones, which I don't really want to talk about too much. But the IBB is down 2.25% right now, just nasty. Pretty much most of the bio names you type in on the watch list, or I do, are down. Gilead, Regeneron. Biogen's just been horrible. It's down here at $200. Tough ones. But then on the other side is the GLP-1 drugs, and they were down yesterday, outside of Turn and Alt, which actually were in the green, and then continuation today. VKTX down here at 77, though it's off the lows. Then you look at Turn. I was happy it was over $7. Sure enough, it's down 8% today, down 50 cents at 650. Altimmune sold off, down 8% as well, down here at 940. GPCR back under the 40 handle, but it's getting close. Hopefully close back above 40. I'm still bullish the sector, and you take a look at the headlines, and it says healthcare stocks fade as obesity drug optimism fades. As if yesterday, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the optimism for obesity drugs fades. To me, it's just classic profit taking, whatever you want to call it. People maybe want to recapitalize some of their portfolio after the Q1 ended, so they're taking profits in some of these names, and then they'll come back in lower. Who knows? But I still like these names. Unfortunately, they're volatile, so gonna have to stick with it. And then on the other side, I don't know if anybody saw the article on Seeking Alpha, put a whole case together on Viking Therapeutics, talked about NASH, talked about their oral GLP-1 solution, talked about their data, and then pretty much said at the end, fair value is $80. I don't know how you, number one, you can really come to that valuation based that things are so far out, and two, I keep saying the M&A, but there's got to be M&A. That you just have to think it's almost negligent by some of these companies, some of the big farmers that have tons of cash on hand. It's almost negligent if you don't have any hand in the GLP-1 side and you're not looking for M&A. You're negligent as a director, leadership team, in my opinion. And if I think that, and I'm not in the drug side, you have to think there's pressures to go out and acquire. So, and I'll continue to do that, continue to be convicted in that side until something happens. That's that. CDLX, unfortunately, down here in the 1347 range. Actually in the green this morning, up to 1450. Selling off on no news that I see. They filed their 8K yesterday, just giving a completion on their convertible offering, which is 4.25%, and was upsized. I think it was 150 million originally, and then now it's upsized to 175 million. The conversion rate is the conversion value on the shares is $18.02, and then they also stated that if you're a holder of the note, you can't convert until the stock closes 130% from the conversion price for 20 consecutive trading sessions. So I think I did the math. Is it $44? I think it's $44 and 44 and change is the convertible price. So if you have the convertible notes and you're that bullish on CDLX, you think that it's going to be over $44 in the coming, before 2029. Obviously, that's way out there, but to me, that speaks volumes for folks who would hold that debt or that note. They are getting 4.25%. So, the company's paying $8 million or a little more than that a year in interest. So, and they also went out and used a lot of the cash from that note to pay off the 2025 note, which is only 1% interest. I don't know why they didn't wait to the end. Still have a year and a half that you could be paying 1%. I didn't really get the kick in the can down the road. Maybe they think rates are going higher. I don't know. Maybe they got a good deal. So maybe that's some of the reason why there's pressure on CDLX. I really can't wrap my head around why it's down here. I think that's it. Who else did I have on the watch list? Oh, one of the other names that just it doesn't get me, and I've talked about the guy, what's his name, Mark Cahodes. He has me blocked on Finto. A lot of names I've been in bullish, he's been bearish. He's very interesting character, likes to like trash people, things like that. That's not my style. But they've been bearish Riley for a while, and even in some of the press releases that Riley puts out, they say there's scathing short attacks, personal attacks. You name it, they're doing it to try and pressure the stock and profit on the company. Company has had issues, so Riley helped do a deal for this guy named John. See, I don't even know this whole story. John Kahn or something. He's a businessman. He used to own Brian Kahn. He used to have a hedge fund that went under, and then supposedly he was part of he was a co-conspirator with another person that had some issues with the fund. They lost money. They tried to cover it, so on and so forth. Just not a good situation. So supposedly Riley helped that person get a leverage deal to acquire some other company. I forget what the name of that one is. But anyway, all it does is it gives an opportunity for people who are short the name to FUD, just like they do with Tesla, create fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Not saying there's no truth to the issue or whatever. It's certainly an issue. And then coupled with that, the company they haven't released their recent earnings and filings because of, I guess, some snafus with that, which again, not a good thing. Supposedly they're out of compliance with the NASDAQ, but the NASDAQ's going to give them an extension to remain listed. So a lot of back and forth, but at the end of the day, the company does $1 billion in revenue. Let's see here. I'm not, it's a boutique firm, so they do wealth management, they do all this fun stuff, but they do $1.5 billion in revenues, and it's a $600 million company, and it has a 76% short interest. So I don't even know how you get a 76% short interest. I don't like to use the word manipulation because that's not a great way to describe the stock market, right? Because there's buyers and sellers. So you want to say there's more buyers than sellers and the stock goes up and that's manipulation, then that's wrong, right? That's a market. But when you can short a stock and there's only buyers, right? I mean, there's buyers and sellers, but there's buyers, sellers, and now another seller because they're borrowing shares and selling those too. You're adding twice the pressure to the downside than there is to the upside. And when you do that to 76% of the outstanding shares, or the float, excuse me, I mean, how is that not somewhat manipulated, right? It's like you're selling twice more than you should be able to, right? That's why shorting, and that's what makes them, I guess, what makes a market too, because if there's issues with the company, then people are going to short it. That's their right to do. Borrow shares that someone holds and sell it, right? Cover it when it goes down and make your profits. But at the same token, you can single-handedly, especially if you have a lot of money, you can double pressure a stock to fall, right? I mean, if there's twice as much selling as buying, despite any underlying fundamentals, it doesn't matter what the stock, how many earnings, the growth, all that stuff. That same token, 76% of the shares in the float are sold short. Like, I mean, I just look at this. I'm like, says 16 million shares in the float. So you're talking 12 million of the 16 million are sold short. Maybe it's 13 million. That's crazy, right? So 13 million, it's a $677 million market cap. So 13 times 22, what is that? 300 and something million dollars of the stock is sold short. That's insanity. So I was looking at calls before, and I'm like, I'm going to pass just because there could be a headline that comes out and the stock just tanks. But I just have this feeling one day it's going to start running and it's going to be 25, 30, 35. And then once they start covering, then it's going to be 40, 45, 50, 60. It's going to do some crazy squeeze. That's just me. I'm going to save this recording and I'll go back and kick myself for not getting calls. But it's definitely one I'm watching and I'm itching to try and get some calls. But again, there's definitely some overhang, right? But if that overhang gets removed, if the filing comes out and it's clean, they have a new auditor or whatever, and they give them a clean bill of health, there's no issues, I think it's going to be $40, $40, $50. Maybe I'm wrong. But but don't be surprised one day if you see me add some calls on Riley. I think that's it. Yeah, ACB down here, it's choppy, 525, now down here at $5. Plenty of time on the call. So April 19th, still have 2.5 weeks. I think, you look at CGC, the volatility on CGC has been insane. It was $10 down to $8. And yesterday, what was it yesterday? I don't even know if I have it up here, but just choppy, big ranges. So, tomorrow could be another day, and it could be over $10. But that's it. I think that's my rant for today. Let's have a great day. Hopefully tomorrow's a little better for some, especially for the biotech names. Maybe tomorrow's the day for some M&A. I can't wait for that. PayPal, right? So PayPal's another frustrating one. 3 days ago, it looked phenomenal, right? I mean, it looked like it was ready to break 70. And then just, yesterday just kind of put a kink in that. And then at least today there's a little life. Maybe close over 65, and then tomorrow could be back at 67. I hope that's the case. But it's been frustrating as heck, that one. Trying to think of some other names here. I think that's it for now. Oh, Exact Science I was staring at last week. They had some positive results from a study. And then that was up Friday. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere this morning, it was up near $80. I didn't see any news, so I don't know what that is. Yeah, that's it, folks. Let's have a great day. Rock and roll.